Hi, I'm an avid golfer and I have pulmonary fibrosis, which requires me to have large amounts of oxygen. Now, you see right now I'm on a portable concentrator and it only goes up to 5, which is really not enough to play on, but I use this as a backup to play to tanks, and when I'm going to the golf course and returning from the golf course where I'm not exerting myself, I use the concentrator. Thing about it, when I leave the golf course, since I use 6 to 8 tanks, normally the tanks are just about depleted. So this is just a backup to the tanks. These concentrators with 5 liters just don't put it out when I need 10 to 12 liters when I play. This is with me when I play golf. It's in the seat beside of me, and I secure it to the seat with bungee cords, and it's just kind of like you know, if I need it, I've got it. So that's what we do with the concentrator when we go play golf. In addition to what I mentioned about the portable concentrator is the noise. Now, if you're moving around, the noise level doesn't seem to be much of a distraction. But when you're on a putting green, and everything's kind of quiet, and all of your playing partners or everybody are pretty well concentrated on the green, the concentrator with its noise does tend to be a distraction. And also, if you need to use a concentrator, and if you can use a concentrator while you're playing golf, again, be careful that where you set it down, make sure that there's no dust, sand, or debris that can get in your concentrator and mess it up. It has filters, but you never know when something is going to get in there and cause you a problem. First of all, before I put this on the on there to fill it, I want to talk a little bit about the regulator. Now, when you're holding a tank, the best way to make sure everything is oriented correctly is that have the refill nozzle pointed toward you. When you do that, you will have the gauge you're looking at, and then the valve on top, you can turn it off or on depending, and also you can notice what the setting is on the regulator. Now, on the valve, right is to tighten, righty-tighty, and left is to loosen. So when you put it on there, you have to make sure that the valve is tight. So righty-tighty, and then make sure that the valve is drained, and you do that by making sure that the valve is there, and you put it on 0 and make sure it's tight, and then you take it out of the bag, obviously, and remove this protecting cap, and then undo this and take it off, and then you place it on the refill attachment. It goes on there, pull it up, making sure that the setting is not high but down below 4, and then you turn on the attachment, and then in about 3 or 4 minutes the orange will go over here to green, which will indicate that it is filling. Now, the advantage of tanks is that you have a more precise volume of oxygen. And for me to play around the golf, it takes 6 to 8 tanks to play. So to do that, tanks are required. The setting that I use on the regulator is 10. This is a 8-liter concentrator, that I use here at the house and obviously fill the tanks. So therefore, I use more oxygen out on the course than I do at home. Now, the disadvantages of tanks are that tanks are heavy. Each one of these tanks weigh approximately 10 pounds. So when you play a round of golf, you know, you're dealing with lifting a tank approximately at least 80 times or more. So therefore, tanks are more desirable. And it'll take 2.5 hours to fill this tank. So therefore, if I use 6 to 8, we're looking at 21 to 24 hours of fill time. Now I have 12 tanks that I have, so when I play, and if I use 7, and I want to play the next day, when I get home, I got to ensure I fill at least 2 tanks. Now if I play 3 days in a row, which I do on a couple of trips, then it takes 21 tanks to play 3 rounds, and I have 12. So then therefore, over a period of time that I'm there, I need to fill at least 9 tanks of oxygen. So it just takes a lot of oxygen if you have pulmonary fibrosis like I have. One of the other things you need to be aware about when you're dealing with that number of tanks, 6 to 8 tanks, you'd have to keep track of what tanks are full, what tanks are empty. Now I use these little label dots here. I put them on the tanks. When a tank is full or empty, I put the E on it. Okay, that tells me that that tank is empty, so when I get home and start filling the tanks, then I know that the tank is empty, needs to be filled. Now once it's full, I just go back and I put a dot on it with no indication. So when I see a dot that's just a dot with nothing on it, then I know that tank is full. But when I load tanks and get ready to go play golf, each tank is verified to make sure it's full, because at dealing with that many tanks, a tank can get by you in no time. Or if I'm out playing and I forget to mark a tank and I get home and it doesn't have anything on it, then it might go into full bin. So therefore, it's very important to keep track of the tanks. Okay, this is how we set the cart up to handle the 8 tanks of the 8 oxygen tanks that is in. I put that rack goes here in the back. Now, I mentioned before, each of these tanks weigh about 10 pounds. So rather than hurting myself, I usually take out a couple of the tanks and then put them on the cart. It goes in here like this. And then I take the strap, take it and wrap around, and then bring it up and put it through. And then the tank is secure. Now, then I take obviously the other 2 tanks and put it in here. So in the rear, I have 6 full tanks that are ready to go. Then I take a tank and I place it in the basket. Now, one of the things you need to mention, look out for here in the basket and be aware of, that the valves, the toggle valves, are at an angle. So you have to be very careful, because you put them in here, something hits the valve and it opens up, and then you've got some excitement. So just make sure that the tank is in there and it can't bump against the valve. Okay, the tank I play with goes in the seat. So it's here and ready to go. So that's how the 8 tanks are positioned in the cart, ready for me to play. Now, the engine that I have on right now is only for before I play, before I get to number 1 tee, and after I get through with number 18 green, then I go back to my portable concentrator. And because at that time, when I come off the green, all 8 tanks, for the most part, have all been used up. Each of these tanks will last approximately 3 holes. So obviously 3 times into 18, that's 6 tanks. But you have to continue monitoring your regulator to ensure that you know when you need to change a tank and you can plan for it. Because you get out there on the course, there are more desirable times to change a tank than others. So you need to be aware of exactly what the regulator is for each tank you're using. Okay, you notice I have a bungee cord attached to the basket around the armrest and back up. Now what this does, this prevents, when you're getting in and out, it prevents the cannula from getting tangled like underneath here. It gets this, and then that last slides right off. So you don't have to worry about it. So that's what this bungee cord is for. And you're ready to go. Because when you're playing and you start making a movement, if something gets hung, then it may jerk your air cannula out of your nose or cause some other difficulty. So that's what this bungee cord is for. Okay, I've just arrived at my ball. I have my tank, and I'm ready to set up to hit the ball. Now, before I dress the ball, I take the tank and I put it down behind me, behind my right heel. And then when I address the ball, then I adjust to make sure that my cannula is over my left shoulder, and then I tug it a little bit to ensure that it is firmly seated on the shoulder. So when I swing, that it stays right there. You notice on the practice swing that in fact it did stay in place. So I'm all ready to go, and I'm ready. Okay, I've just hit the ball, so now I'm ready to get back in the cart. Usually after I hit the ball and get in the cart, that's a good time to double check, see how much air is in the tank. So I take my tank and I orient it so that the fill nozzles is pointing me, so when I unzip it, I'm looking at the regulator, and then I can also adjust the flow. Now, this tank needs to be changed, so here's the sequence of doing that. I take this, I turn it off, and I go righty-tighty. I'm turning the valve off, and then I make sure it's bled, and then I tighten it off. Now I release the tank. Now, one of the things you need to do in the process of changing tanks is to look and make sure that the gasket inside here is okay. And you only need to do that once or twice around. So, okay, I'm ready to go. I have my empty tank. I place it by me on the seat, and I reach back and I get the fill tank. I put it in. Okay, making sure that the valve is pointed toward me. Then it's easy just to put this on, put it on, and then once it's here, here, there, tighten it up, open the valve, set the regulator. Now, I'm back on this tank. I'm ready to zip it up. And, okay, I have changed the tank. Now what I need to do is to make sure that I have taken the tank that is empty. I put an E on my label, E on the label, and then I take it and take it back here. I put it in the rack. Then I take one that is full and I put it up here. And now I'm ready to go to the next exchange in the next 2 or 3 holes. Okay. To take note of where you place your tank on the ground, make sure that if you got a grassy area, then you want to do that. Otherwise, if it's in a dirt area, be very careful, because these tanks have condensation on them and they get really, really wet. And if you don't watch it, you can get tank grit, dirt on the tanks, and then you may have a problem if you get debris like that around your regulator. Get it on the gasket, and then you don't have a good seal when you secure the tank. So you want to make sure that you watch what you do with your tank. Now in sand traps, you really have to be careful. Make sure that you place it, that you don't move it or drag it in the sand. And when you get through getting a sand shot and you come out of the bunker, double check, make sure that everything is clean so you don't have a problem in your round. Also, in the process of changing the tanks, I didn't mention it before, but one important thing is your glove. With the condensation on the tanks, you want to make sure that you use a synthetic glove, because the condensation, the moisture, has least effect on the glove itself. If you use a leather glove, then I think you'll probably have a lot of trouble, because when the leather gets damp, moist, or wet, then it gets slick, so then it doesn't do you any good. So synthetic glove is a lot better. When I get home, I have a card filled out like this that I actually put down the information or the data while I'm playing. And what this card indicates is how many tanks I've used and how many holes each tank went, whether it's 2, 3, or 4 holes. So I use this to reduce the confusion when I get home. Also, it's kind of a guide that when I'm on the course, when I'm looking, when I need to check to see when the next tank change is due. So when I get home, I know that I've got 6 tanks to fill. I should have 6 tanks that are marked with the label marked E, showing that they are empty. Now, if I don't have that, then I need to go back and start checking tanks, verifying their status, and making sure that the empty tanks are set aside for refill. Now we're talking about a large amount of tanks, golf cart, loading, and this type thing. I live here at this golf community, so I don't have a problem. You know, I take my tanks, put them on my cart, go to the golf course, play, and then I come back home. If you do not live on a golf course, then you have additional problems. You know, you got to transport the tanks in your car, and when you get there, you got to make sure you have a dedicated cart that you can load your tanks on. and before you can play. Now, I recommend that if you don't live on a golf course and you go to various courses to play, that you contact the pro in advance and see if he will accommodate you having a dedicated cart to load your tanks on, because with that amount of tanks, you just need to have a dedicated cart and ride by yourself. And also you need to check and see if how many liberties you can take while you're playing, whether it's cart path only, how close you can get to tees, how close you can get to greens. All of that contributes to how you play. The purpose of this video is, first of all, is to help the avid golfer that wants to play golf and not sure of what it entails, what he has to do to play. When I started out, it was like reinventing the wheel. I went on the internet checking out, and it was very little information that I could find on, if I wanted to play golf, what do I need to do, you know? And it was just very, very disheartening. So I went through and thought and thought and thought. I had a very good supplier of oxygen. The company took real good care of me. They gave me the amount of tanks I needed. They gave me refill capabilities, and without that support, you just couldn't do it, because there's no way you can play golf if you can't fill your own tanks. It's just impossible. And I just hope that this helps you all enjoy the game of golf.